Well, I've had this nostalgia talk on my radar now for a couple of months. We found out very abruptly back in January that the Post movie theater on Fort Novacell, formerly known as Fort Rucker here in Alabama, was closing permanently. I took this particularly hard because the Post Theater, which I'll probably call the Fort Rucker Theater throughout this recording because that's how I knew it. They just recently changed the name of the Post. But the Post Theater was my theater of choice for where I live. And I like watching my movies there for a variety of reasons, but the main one was tradition. It was the theater that just felt right. It was the theater of my childhood. In the summer of 1984, my father took my brother and I there to see Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And as far as I can remember, that is the first movie that I saw at the Fort Rucker Theater. And it must have been a rare moment of freedom for my dad because from 1984 to 1985, my father went through Warrant Officer Candidate School and flight school for the Army. So he was pretty much just gone for a year. So this is a rare moment that he must have been home on a weekend, or maybe it was a weekday because it was the summer. But I'll always have that special memory of my dad and my brother and I going to see Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and I'm pretty sure that's the first movie I saw at the Post Theater. I also vividly remember seeing The Karate Kid there, which I think came out just a few weeks after Temple of Doom, and I think by then my dad was into his training because I remember my mom taking me and my brother, and maybe my sister as well. She was pretty little, but probably old enough to go to the movies by then. Maybe. Anyways, when you have a theater like that where you have these strong 1980s experiences to which I am so often tied, if you've listened to enough of these nostalgia talks, it really means something to you. And then, of course, as military families do, we moved away and then, moved back here. My dad being an Army aviator, we would often return to Fort Rucker for different training things. And we ended up back here on a semi-permanent basis here for a few years when I was in high school. We landed back here in 1992, where I began once again going to see movies at the Post Theater. These were my high school years, so I went there on a few dates with a few different girls back then, one of which I'm currently married to. I still remember Johanna and I's first movie that we saw together at that theater was a movie called Chasers, and it has Tom Berenger in it, and it's not that great, but I still remember it. But mostly my high school memories of the Post Theater center around one of my very good friends, Jose. And Jose and I, man, we would just go. We didn't even really care what was playing because the base theater was within walking distance of my house. I could walk there. It was probably a mile and a half, maybe. And then coming from the other direction, maybe 2 miles from Jose's house. So, a lot of times we would just meet there and watch a movie and then go to one or the other's house for a sleepover. And we saw some good stuff, some interesting stuff there. Just the ones that leaped to mind. One of my very favorite underrated movies of the 90s, which is Brain Scan. Jose and I saw Brain Scan on a whim, and that was great. And I think our friend Randy may have joined us to watch A Perfect World, which was a Clint Eastwood directed movie starring Kevin Costner. That was a weird one. And I also have some vivid memories of my brother who had, left for college in the Army. Occasionally would come home to visit, and he and I would almost always go up and see movies there. I'm pretty sure we caught Demolition Man there and Highlander 4. I know I also saw Highlander 3 there. And then my dad was gone to Korea, so my mom was sort of single mom raising us, and her and I used to go up there about every other week to watch a movie, just to have some quality time together as I was getting ready to graduate high school, move to college. And we saw Braveheart there. Remember that? We saw that there together. it was my mom, so of course she wanted to go see like mom movies. I remember going to see that movie, Something to Talk About, which is not something a high schooler would probably pick for himself, but it's a good memory of spending time with my mom. And then I moved to college and, would come home to Fort Rucker every once in a while to visit. And if there was something really cool playing there, even if I'd already seen it because I worked at the movie theater, sometimes I'd go watch it again. Something like GoldenEye, stuff like that. But then, moved away, had my own career, and then ended up back in this area again. We moved back here in 2007. So it just felt so good in 2007 on to go back to that theater. And that's where I watched like a bunch of the Marvel movies and some of the newer Star Wars movies, all that stuff. I liked going to that theater. That theater felt like home to me. Again, I'd been watching movies there since Temple of Doom. And I'm pretty sure the last movie I saw at that theater was Ghostbusters Afterlife. And little did I know that would be the last time I would be there. It hurts more than I thought it would, to be honest with you. It's just felt right, It just felt like the place to watch a movie. And it wasn't just movies that would tie me to that theater. It's a huge theater. It seats, I don't know, it's 800 people, maybe, something like that. I used to know the exact number because I worked on Fort Rucker for a contractor, and sometimes we would have classes that were so large we'd have to book that theater to have the classes in there to sit hundreds of people at once. And I want to say it sat somewhere between 700 and 800 people. So it was also tied to my job. I would go there to run training for large amounts of people. And every time I walked in that building, it just felt like this warm feeling because I was like, this is like my theaters where I see so many movies. And also they would have live shows there. The soldier show that sort of travels around where they find these really talented soldiers who sing and dance well, and they'll travel around the country to different base theaters to would perform there because it had a very large, like a deep stage. Like some theaters you go to and you just go up there and it's just a screen and that's it. This had sort of a deep stage to it, so you could have big stage productions on it. So I've seen live shows there, training events there, and like I said, most importantly, these movies I would see there. And one of the great things about the base theater is always much more affordable than your local theaters. There was plenty of times where movies were 99 cents, and then as time went by, they had to start charging a little more, maybe $5, $6, $7 in its waning years. And maybe that's why they had to close it. Maybe the solvency just wasn't there. But you know what? I can tell you another cool thing about it. Especially in the later years, movie companies would send movies to the military theater system even before they were released to the public. So like you could see certain movies a week in advance if you watched it at the post theater or base theater. I'm pretty sure we did that with Ant-Man. It might have been Ant-Man 2, one of those. I'm pretty sure my son Jordan and I went to as an early release. And I want to say Mission Impossible Fallout. Now that I think of it, I wonder which one of those movies came out last, whether it was Ghostbusters Afterlife or Mission Impossible Fallout. Whichever one of those two came out last is the last movie I saw there. I feel like it was Ghostbusters, but I don't have a calendar in front of me. But that was neat to be able to see them sort of before the general public got to see them. I remember at the beginning of Fallout, I believe it was, that Tom Cruise himself came on with an appreciation message to the military folks. I also think that happened at Ant-Man. I feel like Paul Rudd came on screen and did an appreciation to the military community talk right before the movie. And speaking of before the movies, if those of you who are still listening to my sad ramblings, missing a movie theater, one of the neat things about any military theater is they play the national anthem before every movie, and everyone stands up, and they have this really cool military montage of neat, things being done in the Navy and the Army and the Air Force playing over the national anthem and jets flying. And it's really, really quite cool and a neat tradition that I've always enjoyed. So that will be missed. Just the national anthem before a movie is a very military community thing. And I can remember when I would take people to the movies on base that maybe weren't used to that. They always like, that's really weird. And I go, it's just normal to me. But yeah, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Karate Kid, In the Line of Fire, Brain Scan, Malcolm X, I saw at that theater. Oh man, so many movie titles just flowing through my mind right now. I can't even name them all, but yeah, it's gone, unceremoniously gone. I think it was just broadcast on social media one day. Hey, the theater's closing January 22nd, and it will never be open again. Permanent closing. And I guess it's the world we live in. I guess so many people have gone to streaming, and there's a pretty nice, relatively new theater just outside of Fort Novacell, in the city I live in, called Enterprise. And in Enterprise, like I said, a relatively new theater was built a couple of years ago. People really like it. It's very comfortable, more modern, and I guess that contributed to it as well. Just, I think it's a combination of both. I think people like the modernized theater in town, and I think people stream more, and I don't know that people go to the movies as often anymore. And, well, that's a whole topic for another day, is why people might not be going as much. But yeah, the Post theater didn't make it, and it just feels so weird. Like there's a piece of my life that just disappeared. The place I would go just to be happy to watch movies is just gone. Like it's especially weird because the facility is still there. Like I can physically see it, but I can't go see movies there anymore. Oh man, I just had another memory of going there to see, I think it was Thor, maybe Thor 2. And they would get like local guys, like local soldiers and guys who go to the Post gym a lot, like really built guys, and they would put them in costume. There was like a guy there who I actually knew from work who was a really built, muscular guy, and he was dressed as Thor, and it was like an event for the kids. And oh man, but that's it. As I do with these nostalgia talks, this one obviously not as focused as some of the ones I've done in the past, because it's more of just an emotional reaction recording than anything. But man, I wanted to commit it to digits and be able to come back to this 20 years from now, and maybe I won't be as sad. I'll probably be more used to the idea that it's gone, but at least I can remember all these cool movies and memories I have, between going as a child with my parents to going as a high school student on dates, or with my buddies Jose and Randy, and then coming back as an adult and bringing my own kids there to see it. Even part of my professional life, doing training events there. It definitely has a look back and smile feel, but right now it has the sadness that I remember a character who once said in an Indiana Jones movie that we've reached the age where life stops giving us things and starts taking them away. And that's what this feels like right now. But such is life. Things do get taken away. But I just wanted to record this in honor of this wonderful place that has been a part of my life for 40 years. 40 years. I think that's it for me on this one. If you have a theater that you feel this way about and it's still open, go see something in the next couple weeks. Do it for me and tell me about it. Tell me about your theater in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. One thing I just did remember is I always sat in the same spot. The way the theater's designed, there's a big mass of seats. I know that's how most theaters are designed. Stay with me. There's a big... If you want to think of it this way, the theater is basically divided into thirds. A big massive thirds on the left, a big mass, a third in the center, and a big massive third on the right. And then halfway down, horizontally, there's a big walkway. So think of the big mass left, center, and right. And then about halfway down, maybe a couple 3 rows missing so people can walk through. And I always sat in the dead center. So basically the very front part of the first half of center. So center of the theater, you have a ton of leg room. That's where I always sat there. And when I get there and someone else was sitting there, it would break my heart, but it's okay. Anyways, enough about my theater. Let me hear about yours. I'd love to hear what your childhood theater was like. Do you still go there? Is it still open? Is there a theater that has special memories for you? I'd love to hear about it. Please put it in the comments. And speaking of comments, I've got one here from friend of the show, Brad Abraham. who wanted to comment on my last nostalgia talk about the mall and mall culture of the 80s and 90s. Brad wrote, Happy New Year, Jarrod. I greatly enjoyed your nostalgia talk about the malls of your youth. I wrote about some of mine back in September and what we're missing because of the gradual decline as a third place to gather outside of home or school or work. Brad provided a link to his blog site where he also talked about mall culture and went on to say the mall experience is certainly a thing that unites Gen Xers of all walks of life. I also had a great email send-in from friend of the show, Sean Urbanski, which I wish I could read to you. It was very touching about his memories of his mall experience. He sent me an email, had a bit of an email problem, and I lost a ton of mine, and that one's gone now, which breaks my heart because Sean sent such a good email, and I wish I could read it. I just want to give Sean a shout out and say thanks for reaching out. It was a great email, and I'm sorry I lost it, and I can't share it with the guys, but he was with us on this one, Gen Xers. he was with us. Love to hear from you. You can drop a comment here on YouTube. You can reach out to us at LONGBOX CRUSADE on X, Facebook, Instagram. It's all LONGBOX CRUSADE. You can even leave a voicemail if you like. 707-532-5269. That's 707-532-LBOX. Leave me a voicemail. I'll be happy to play it on the next show. Let me know what you think. Is your childhood theater still around? What's it like? Other theaters that have special meaning to you? I want to know. Anyway, I've been Jarrod Alberich, the Yard Sale Artist. If you want to reach out to me personally, I am at Yard Sale Artist on X and Facebook and Instagram. And I'd love to hear from you. And until next time, take care out there, and we'll take another stroll down memory lane on another day.
This episode features the copyright-free music track Snowfall by Scott Buckley.